So just a bit about yourself. You know,
Yeah.
where did you come from?
I come from Rossville Street in the Bogside, number 10 Rossville Street, which is down at the bottom of the street. It's right where Bloody Sunday happened. I come from right in the middle of the Bloody Sunday killing ground, if you can call it that. And I, I moved from there, sort of, I was in Garton Square, sort of not far away, sort of. I seemed a big move at the time when you're a kid. Rossville Street to Garton Square, I thought to be foreigners. You know, it's and that's where I lived around this area ever since. I'm back living sort of about a couple of hundred yards from where I was born, and I quite like that. But I was sort of shaped by growing up, sort of in the Bogside and going to school there and all the rest of it, sort of, and going to column. So that's where sort of the background to my general attitudes to life. I think from an early age I would have been socially aware to some extent because my father was deeply involved in the trade union movement. He was the secretary of the local branch of the electricians trade union. Well, he wasn't an electrician, he was a labourer. I'm not quite sure how he got into the ETU, and he was in Derry Trades Council. And what some of my earliest memories, you know, when I was 5, 6, 7, 8 years old, we were with groups of men, it was always men, in the house, and they usually be sitting in the front room, the good room, the parlour, where nobody was ever allowed except at special occasions. Well, people sitting there talking, so that would happen. It's my impression it happened sort of 2 or 3 times a week, but maybe it wasn't that often, talking about trade union affairs. And they were associated with the Independent Labour Group, Stephen McGonigal and Seamus Quinn in Derry, and who would stand for election against the Nationalist Party in the Bogside area all those years. My father would have been involved in that too. So that area of politics, labour and trade union politics. So I would have been, my father was very interested in foreign affairs and so on. I mean, in our house, people used to be arguing about Archbishop Macarius of Cyprus and the Shah of Iran being overthrown and then replaced sort of by a CIA coup. Things like that were talked a lot around the street in those days and in our house. So I would have grown up with some understanding of a political world outside. You know, sort of, I think that today people are more likely to be thrust into the politics of orange and green nationalism and unionism, because that's what's to a greater extent than when I was a kid are dominating people's thinking. Whereas I wouldn't have been the only person who was. There was a wider, in a funny way, I think there was a wider range of politics available, if you like, sort of in places like the Bogside then. Although we like to think of ourselves as much better informed now, I actually think that there was a broader perspective back then, maybe, than there are now.
There's more discussion about world events.
I think that there was. I remember sort of the media used to be very different. I mean, hardly anybody can remember now that there used to be foreign news on the front page of the journal. You know, foreign stories, and partly that was that you didn't have sort of network television and all the rest of it, and you know, national newspapers, so to speak, whether they're Irish or British national newspapers, didn't circulate to nearly the extent that they do today. So newspapers tended to cover quite a lot. You know, the moon landings would have been front page news, and the local papers, and so on. Now that wouldn't happen now, sort of, and it's meant that. You know, I think anyway it reflected the fact that local affairs were more mixed up sort of with global affairs. Strangely enough, or in one way of looking at them, they were more mixed up with global affairs than they are today.
At university, what were you like?
I don't know what it was like at university. It was the university was very different again. Like I had a grant, you know, sort of used to pay you to go to university. When you tell students that today, that not only did we not pay fees, they paid us. To go and you know, your books free and all the rest. But mind you used to get the grant 3 times a year for the 3 different, whatever they are, sessions or terms. Nearly everybody had the grant spent in the first 2 weeks of every term. So on drink mainly. So I don't. It was an okay time, and I met a lot of interesting people, sort of, you know, and it was getting out of Derry. That was a big thing, you know. No, not that I wanted to get out of Derry, but when you're 17, 18 years old, it's just about time that you want an experience somewhere else, living away from the parents.
So what was the plan for after university?
Well, I never had plans. To be honest, I mean, in most things, I've stumbled from one thing to the other, and just things occur to me. I was working I worked on the roads for 3 years in England and McAlpines and the M6 motorway, Preston to Birmingham, which I loved, and so forth. But I mean, my whole involvement in like the civil rights movement and everything like that sort of for the last 45 years And it was just an accidental thing. I mean, I never intended to become involved in it. I was actually living in London, southeast London, in Bexley. Sort of, I had a beautiful, wonderful girlfriend whom I loved, and she had 4 kids. I mean, I didn't, but they were. I had an absolutely good life. I was never intending to come back. I only came back for 10 days to see my sister. She was home from Canada, from Winnipeg. And I came back, and I remember I was walking up Roswell Street, and I met my old friend from childhood, Dermy McClenaghan. And we stopped and chatted. He says, will you give us a hand? He says, we're pulling this caravan out into the road to protest against the housing discrimination and the lack of houses for anybody in Derry. So with this person, John Wilson and Mary Wilson, were living in a caravan up a back lane, literally, because there was hardly any houses being built and Catholics were not being given houses and so on. So this was a protest and so on. So we did that. And then for a few hours, then we decided when that didn't work, we blocked all the traffic, just talking around the way. So a lot of people I didn't know, we'll come back next week and do it again for 24 hours, which is all right. But then I had to stay for that. And then we were all arrested after that, so I had to stay for that as well. And the next thing I knew, I was phoning Olivia, that was my girlfriend, I keep putting it off and putting it off. And she said, come on, where are you? Will I come over there? All out there. And I never really went back to it. One thing borrowed another. Then there were different demonstrations and different meetings and rows and ructions and arguments and arrests and all the rest of it. So that was the entirely accidental way that I became involved in the civil rights movement.
So just briefly, it's well trodden ground, but it's for people who don't know. Which issues created the need for a civil rights movement?
I think that you can look at it in grand historical terms and say that it was, that after partition you had, 2 communities in the north and one was represented in the new partition state and the other wasn't, and that's the context. And that's an absolutely accurate way of looking at it. But there are other ways of looking at it as well, so not as alternatives on it, but as well sort of additional matters in the whole economic dimension of it. As opposed to the political and ethnic and communal dimension, I think it's very important indeed. You had the issues of houses and jobs were absolutely central to the emergence of the civil rights movement, because they're common throughout the world. People need shelter, and you need sort of money to live. I mean, houses and jobs are absolutely, and there were very few jobs in Derry. And not enough houses. Derry Corporation, because of discrimination and the way the council was elected, a minority of unionists were able to get a majority of the seats on the council. And they did that by manipulating boundaries. That was the main mechanism for it. And that meant that the union, and because only householders had a vote, it meant that if you gave a person a house, you gave them a vote. And of course, the Unionist Party had to be very careful who they gave houses to, and because they didn't want to give them votes. And that therein lay the connection between housing deprivation, sort of living, sort of a 50. We were actually quite well off, sort of in Russell Street. There was a lot of time there was 8 of us. There would have been my mother, my father, 5 children, sort of, and there was my auntie Kathleen, and sort of who at times would have been living there as well, and a 2 up, 2 down house. Now that sounds very, by today's standards, I think it probably sounds very crowded, but we were not by no means the most on the top end of overcrowdedness, sort of in places like Russell Street, Union Place, Pilots Row, Eden Place, all our whole area, Fox's Corner, Wellington Street, our whole area was just jam packed with people, and everybody was aware that one of the reasons, at least, that we didn't have houses or adequate houses and didn't have jobs had to do with the political situation. So when you began to campaign simply on those economic issues, it wasn't like Dublin or London or somewhere where you could find it. You very quickly in Northern Ireland came up against the whole question of the state, and the nature of the state, sort of, and its discriminatory nature and all the rest of it. So it wasn't just that it was we had, as Colony said, of course, it wasn't a religious thing. If you weren't a householder in a Protestant area, you didn't have a vote either. A lot of people in the Fountain, this is often forgotten, living in the Fountain area, didn't have a vote, and the thing. But it was an unbalanced situation, and that made it very difficult to get at the heart sort of the economic problem. I can remember a leader of the Nationalist Party in Derry, before civil rights when I was a kid, standing in Cable Street making a speech on the night before an election. He's a businessman, and I remember him shouting about somebody was being heckled sort of from behind by some younger people and so on. about jobs and houses, the way the old Nationalist Party are useless at dealing with that. And he actually said, the people in the middle of the box, this businessman said, "We don't want their jobs and houses, we want our freedom." And everybody's here, what? Sort of. Now that, I remember sort of thinking that taught me something about sort of nationalism. And you have to be very careful when you're talking about what I think are the wrongs of nationalism, not to conflate it with the nationalist people. You're talking about national as a political ideology, which I think is useless from a working class point of view, sort of, and that was an example of it. So we had a big tangle of politics here. It was never as simple sort of as anybody thought it would be. There were people in the labour movement at that time who thought, well, just ignore the orange green thing. Just ignore it. And that's the way to deal with it. And then there were other people sort of who were nationalists and unionists to say, no, you have to deal with the orange green thing first.
The DHAC made of the Republican Club and Labour left, is that right?
Aye. Most of the people in the Derry Housing Action Committee were not members of anything. There were people, Johnny White, for example, a good friend of mine from the day that he died. Johnny was would have been the leading light in the James Connolly Republican Club in Derry. And Johnny, Johnny was far more a socialist than he was a Republican. Again, sort of when we think of Republican clubs sort of back, say, 1967, 68, we tend to think in the perspective of today as to what that meant. There was nobody, there hadn't been any gunfire or anything sort of in the previous few years. I'd say we were talking 1966, 67, and so on. It was quite a quiet time, sort of, and people like Johnny had, were actually looking to involve themselves sort of with masses or the masses of people sort of in protests, and a strategy of getting people onto the streets was a very different thing from an armed struggle strategy. It's so the people who would have been involved in the Housing Action, the Derry Housing Action Committee, certainly there would have been members of the Labour Party Young Socialists, of whom I would have been one, and Johnny, and people from the Republican Club, but other people like Eamonn, Bridget Bond, Paddy Kirk. Sort of some of the people who were most active, sort of, the Housing Action Committee were involved in housing. That's what the big Tully, as the name of the organisation implied. It wasn't a front, it genuinely wasn't. Sort of most people nowadays would be suspicious when they hear something like the housing campaign. Who's running that? Who's behind it, or which faction really has got that one? And they're right, that happens. There wasn't that sort of a situation then. It was just all about the subject, about housing. All the divisions were to come later, sort of under the impact of events and so forth. But it's our demands were in with the Housing Action Committee was that we wanted a crash programme of building houses. 1967, Derry Corporation built no houses, zero, sort of in an area sort of where there was a massive housing need. Desperate overcrowding and illness and all the rest of it. They built no houses at all. So the first thing we wanted was build more houses. And secondly, fair distribution. We wanted a point system for the allocation of houses. And those were the things that brought people together. Now you could be fighting for housing on that basis and still believe in the union, Great Britain. And I can remember Yule Adair, the trade union leader and so on. Yule was very active at that time. Yule came from new buildings and so on. I remember other people like that sort of who were in there sort of a fighting away. Or you could be a sea green Republican sort of and still on the housing issue be working well together. Now, I wouldn't exaggerate the extent to which it bridged the divide and so on, but certainly the Housing Action Committee was not confined to one community or the other at the time. And people naively, when you look back on it now, people like myself believed that here we had the answer to the age-old communal division. Sort of that if we just kept on the housing, just all the economic things, we could sweep over the sectarian divide. Now, this, as I say, turned out to be a somewhat naive hope, but it's but it was because there wasn't sort of fighting, and there weren't people in prison and all the rest of it, all the rest of the pain of the Troubles. It seemed a reasonable thing to believe at the time.
But am I right, and have I read it right? I think I have, that it was the DHAC, in the broad sense, was you wanted to create a political chaos. The London Dairy Corporation was a prime target and disrupt meetings and businesses. Oh yeah. Oh, we were out to, these colonists were out to disturb the political peace. The whole situation had been one in which the
vast, you know, a majority certainly of Catholic people voted nationalist, and so the hopes for change were opposed in the Nationalist Party, and the way we saw it at the time, and I would still see it, is that they were useless. That this business of going, you know, quietly and well, not respectfully, but even sort of going, sort of acting in a constitutional manner.
Who was that?
The Nationalist Party, who were the leaders of this era,
Right.
Eddie McCann and Tom Gormley and Paddy Gormley and a lot of them, that they were going up to extra, and they were following the rules. They were proving themselves worthy, sort of being treated equally, which is a rather abject way to approach things. And we were out. Yeah, I remember we're talking here 1967, 68. I mean, somebody to be at that age, you know, I had been through when I'd been working in London, all the rest of it, and even travelling. It was easy to travel over to London. It used to be £2 to go from Aldergrove to London, and even with the inflation allowed for it, still it was a small amount of money, which almost anybody could. Standby fares, you just lowered, went up, and it was like getting a bus. You know, and through that I was involved in the anti-nuclear war movement, sort of the Vietnam War movement, solidarity movements, sort of which see various anti-colonial struggles going on around the world, sort of a very heavy student presence and all that, sort of, and this was the days of, you know, the Alabama, sort of, and Birmingham and Montgomery and all that, and the Black Civil Rights Movement, sort of the Vietnam War demonstrations, which are absolutely huge at times. I spoke to over 150,000 people in Grosvenor Square in London at that time. So, and it was, you know, that street fighting man, sort of the song and stuff. That's what it was, and that was not just in Derry. Like, that was all over Europe. Sort of, there was what's called a student uprising. There were far more people.
Paris and all that.
All that. That affected the way people were thinking, and it meant sort of that we saw ourselves, when we saw Northern Ireland, something bigger, sort of that was actually happening across the world. Sort of was that. So our idea was we were there to disrupt the political peace. It wasn't just in the north. At that time there was an international movement of students and radicals of various kinds, again to disrupt the global capitalist system. So definitely we were out to disrupt things.
And the chapter of the book too, it seems to say that if your group is going to be dismissed, some people would just dismiss you as that you were communists. Did you mention that?
Well, we were always, I mean, people were accusing us of communists. I was always felt strange with people because we had to defend ourselves against the allegation we were communists. Because when it came to things like the Communist Party, Orthodox communism, and Moscow and all that, you know, not only would I have been 100% opposed to all that stuff and opposed to Stalinism and the fact that there was no democracy in the Soviet Union, it was a dictatorship, you know, sort of society built like a barracks, you know, so I had no sympathy with it whatsoever. But it was very difficult to get that, it still is at times, to get that across, you know, because what was happening is that the people, somebody would go up in Russia and they claimed to be communists. But it wasn't really that. Their opponents in the West also said they were communists, and they were having this argument, communism and anti-communism. So if you were standing aside, like saying, hold on, we are the real communists over here at the side, it was a very difficult argument to make.
Would you say that you were what Karl Marx wrote?
Oh,
communist, but not a Soviet communist?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'd be a follower of Marx and Lenin and Trotsky, and it was in the divide between Trotsky and Stalin, sort of, that I would have taken a stand, you know, sort of with Trotsky. I believed it was a proper revolutionary, believed in revolutionary democracy and all the rest of it, as against Stalin, who became sort of the orthodox leader, sort of leader of a big, powerful country, you know, his philosophy. But I am a communist. I regard myself as a communist, and so when we were accused of being communists, I always felt very awkward. I mean, do I defend myself here and say, "How dare you associate me with Joseph Stalin and all that," or should I say, "Yes, I am a communist. I'm just a wee bit more left wing than people in Russia." I think one of the big differences between, you know, it's a long time, it's 50 years almost, you know, or it is 50 years when I was rampaging around these streets, and now it was easier then. It was definitely easier then. Everybody just assumed then that the next generation was going to be better off. that we, when I was a kid, it was assumed by everybody, we were going to be better off than our parents. And so it turned out to be, because just the rising economy and all the rest of it right across the Western world and so forth. And when things are getting better, you can have campaigns and sort of quite vigorous fights, because you want your fair share of the extra that's coming along. But when things are tight, when things are not getting better, at the moment, now in 2016, things are getting worse and going to go on getting worse. I mean, there's going to be more poverty, there's going to be more family breakups and all that. The homelessness is going to get worse. And we know that because the budgetary forecasts are there, and the sort of in the economic crisis can't be denied. You don't get big demonstrations, really, is my experience, sort of when things are desperate, when people are desperate. You get big demonstrations when people think they're being treated unfairly, but they can do something about it. Then they're out to the streets, let's do it. If you think you're being treated unfairly, and it doesn't seem there's anything you can do about it, that sort of you get a sense of futility about it. That can make people turn in on themselves and all the rest of it, but it doesn't lead people to, anybody marching on the streets and all of that must have some sort of optimism about them.
Do you think that the today civil rights movement back then has been somehow, has it forgotten, or has it become part of our, so we had Black America, that's still a big thing, you get films out every year, Selma last year, and you get the, but here it seems to be civil rights day. You think John Hume rioting, that banner going down the street there, civil rights.
Aye.
That's why I was asking you about and we details about you, and it's not questioned or talked about, I don't think.
No, well, I think I wanted, I think history, parts of history just get clouded over because something which seems more exciting and so on, and more dramatic and all comes along. There is among people of the generation after me, or even the generation after that, they actually have got it into their minds, and I understand why this would be the case. And what happened here in Derry and in the north is that there was discrimination against Catholics in the 1960s. The Catholics rose up, the state attacked them, and thus they moved to republicanism, and that's what it was all about. Now that's not what it was all about. And I mean if you look sort of at say 68, 69, 70, 71, sort of in that period. I would think 72. I would think to the end of 71, say, sort of internment, I suppose, in August 71 was the big game changer, and it sent events sort of spiralling in a different direction. But all the big gains that were made, I mean, for example, we got equal a distribution of houses. For a while, we got a lot of houses being built. In Derry, the housing situation was transformed. So that was achieved by the civil rights movement. That was the disarming of the police, which of course didn't last more than a couple of years because of the way the situation developed. That was achieved by the civil rights movement. The disbandment of the B Specials, who were a sectarian paramilitary police force, that was achieved by the civil rights movement. Anti-discrimination laws in terms of hiring and firing at work, that was achieved by the civil rights movement. So that's often forgotten. In fact, it's almost always forgotten, and I would argue myself that more, as far as the ordinary day-to-day interests of working class people are concerned, as opposed to national aspirations and the rest of it. But in terms of the day-to-day economic interests of working class people, more was achieved by the civil rights movement than has been achieved by either people going to parliament or people going and having an armed struggle. Which are the two things that people argue about: armed struggle or constitutional politics. I would say politics on people power delivered more than paramilitaries or constitutional politics. I still believe that.
Do you think the 30 years of violence overshadowed the civil rights movement?
Absolutely. I mean, the 30 years, in fact, even just once I got into, after Bloody Sunday, for example, and so forth, one of the interesting things is if you look at the Bloody Sunday history, the year after Bloody Sunday, the commemorative march was run by the Northern Ireland. The Bloody Sunday march itself was run by the Northern Ireland Civil Rights Association. Now, I've heard young people who seem to believe that the Bloody Sunday march is organised by Sinn Féin or some similar organisation. Not at all. It's the Northern Ireland Civil Rights Association. Bridget Bond was the chair of the meeting on Bloody Sunday. and hardly anybody remembers who Bridget Bond was. You know, it was Bridget Bond who opened or unveiled sort of the Bloody Sunday Monument. You see her name at the bottom of it. Who was that and why was she unveiling this significant Derry monument? Well, that's why she was the main woman involved in all that. And there are other people like that here quite forgotten. Kathy Harkin is a good friend of mine who's in the Labour Party. Kathy would have been one of the most active people in all the social movements, housing and employment and the rest of it. So all those efforts are largely forgotten. And it is true sort of that once the thing became an armed struggle because of the way the state had behaved, then sort of the old ideas of republicanism took over. And that's natural almost, you know, because there hadn't been that, it was tiny in the mid-60s, this tiny strain of people who believed in fighting the British. That's what we did it. An armed struggle against the British was the way forward. Now, once the state sort of brutalised the civil rights movement and so on, that began to make a lot of sense to people, yeah. And what had been a tiny sort of tendency within local politics, say in 1967, I got there. 4 years later, so it was actually the dominant, or becoming the dominant sort of form of political thought in a place like the Bogside. And in that situation, the civil rights movement virtually forgotten, you know, or regarded as having been of no importance at all. You know, and so there's things about the civil rights movement that I think we need to rediscover. The idea sort of getting people in large numbers to do things for themselves and to come out and protest in large numbers, as I say, as opposed to shooting somebody or just standing for election. So it's a pity it has, but yes, I suppose sort of when things changed as dramatically as they did sort of in the north of Ireland, you're going to get some forgetfulness about what preceded all this.
What are you doing now? What's your focus? What do you do day to day now? What are your issues now today?
Oh well, the issues that I'm dealing with today, so on a day-to-day basis, are much the same as I was dealing with then. Sort of I'm in the Trades Council in Derry, so I'm involved in the trade union movement that's fighting against redundancies and defending people's wages, and also defending people who've been treated like dirt at work, because sort of as they're the decline of trade unions overall and the new arrogance of employers has meant that people are very badly treated and humiliated at work, including sort of at some jobs that you would think are middle class and so on. So, I mean, some of my time, or bits of it, will be taken up sort of with advising people and representing people in disciplinary proceedings and tribunals and so forth. And it also sort of be involved in the anti-war movement in Derry, sort of protesting about the Middle East and pro-Palestinian stuff. I'm involved sort of in environmental campaigns, you know, for the No Burn campaign. I mean, just to stop pollution of the air, to stop the pollution of the River Faughan, from which we take a lot of our drinking water, just right at the present time, sort of that's requiring sort of a lot of energy and work and research to try and stop what's happening. We've got the scandal sort of the way of illegal dumping sort of around Derry and over the border in Donegal is absolutely huge, and very little is being done about it. So I'm deeply involved sort of in that sort of thing as well. So you take it all up, I mean, I don't have a minute sort of where it is, but it's all bits and pieces like that. I mean, to do with housing, to do with employment, to do with people's civil rights. And there's also what we call the legacy issues. I mean, I'm still very much involved in the Bloody Sunday campaign. I've written 3 books and about half a dozen pamphlets about Bloody Sunday, and produced or helped to produce 3 television films about it, and that still goes on. I think there's a lot of stuff which has still not been uncovered about Bloody Sunday, particularly about the involvement and the responsibility of senior politicians and military people, and not just the what Kipling called the poor bloody infantry, i.e. the savages. That's where he went into the Bogside and murdered and wounded people. You know, I mean, bad bastards, the whole lot of them. But I'll tell you what, they weren't on their own. No. They were sent in by somebody. They were given to understand you can do this. They were given the go-ahead to do it. And I think it's often vaguely even unfair, you know, about putting individual paratroopers on trial if we don't put the Minister of Defence at the time, and Lord Carrington, and the Army top brass, Kitson and Ford and these people, so you've got off scot-free, you know, sort of. So there's an awful lot of work still to be done sort of on that, and on people with other legitimate grievances arising out of the Troubles. I mean, and that can be very time consuming as well. I'm not complaining about the time that these things take. I'm quite happy to do it, but sometimes it does pile up a bit, and if you're sitting at home sort of at 10:30 at night and you really want watch the Coronation Street that you recorded earlier, sort of, and you still somebody on the phone talking about going to see him or blah 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 and all this here, and you feel like fuck off, you know, you can't. That's all. So it does piss me off at times, but I enjoy being busy. I really enjoy being busy. I would hate that if I'm not doing anything. I look around. What can I do? What can I do? There must be something I should be doing. So it's and it's too late to stop now. Anyway, you know.
So there's no let up.
No, I don't want to lie. It's not what you would call agony or an imposition, you know, sort of
It's just what you are and what you do.
It's just what I do. As I say, it's just my habit now, you know, sort of you know, sort of. And I find, you say, when people, and some down to you, I mean, a lot of people around Derry know me because I've been around that long, you know, sort of, and standing on platforms and shouting sort of people. I mean, I honestly, if I walk from here to Guildhall Square, I guarantee that at some point somebody will stop and say, "Oh, wait a minute. Something I wanted to talk to you about," sort of, and you sort of say, "Oh my God." But you can't say, I mean, tell people to F off, people are entitled to talk to you. And either it can be just a nice conversation, but you know there's a possibility I'm going to be dragged in myself in here, sort of, that is going to take hours or more. But anyway, sure, that's grand, that's the way the world is.
That's great, Eamonn. Thanks very much.
Okay, man. Okay, you're very welcome.